Hello, everybody. Dr. Steve Hassan. It is May 28th, 2025. Thanks for joining me on my live stream. Wow, so many news stories happening and so many things to talk about. I guess I'll start by saying that I was invited by Lev Parnas to join him on his Substack Live on Monday, Memorial Day, to discuss Ukraine, but also to discuss Trump apparently having a meltdown and criticizing Vladimir Putin and Putin's likely reaction to it. Very interesting stuff going on there. In the news, I'm delighted that more and more Springsteen effects are happening as he continues to speak out against authoritarianism and fascism. It's enabling and encouraging other celebrity influencers to support him and to speak out themselves to their followers. And it's so vital, I think, to counter any of the fear, self-censorship that often will happen when fascists try to take over and threaten people for their free speech and to be able to continue to do so. And so I'm very grateful that I am not alone. There are many other people more famous than myself speaking out about the need for freedom and rule of law and checks and balances and separation of church and state. Had a fascinating interview podcast Substack with L. Hardy on Pentecostalism. And if you haven't yet read the Cult of Trump book, it's a major part of Trump's base are people in these uh, groups where they think they're following a prophet or an apostle that speaks to God, who tells them that Trump won the 2020 election. But they do the BITE model of authoritarian control, behavior, information, thought, and emotional control to program people to believe that everyone outside their group is the enemy, is Satan, is demonic, etc., as a tool of control. And I especially enjoyed Elle's interview. Check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. And the video is on my YouTube channel, which we're developing greatly. And next week, I have a pediatrician, endocrinologist, the hacking of the American mind, talking about the food industry, in particular the sugar industry, which is poisoning our health. Fascinating interview with Dr. Lustig next week. I also want to talk about the massive GOP mega bill that adds trillions of dollars to our debt by giving massive tax breaks to wealthy people and corporations at the expense of everyone else, threatening to take people off of Medicaid who need it, SNAP programs, taxing Social Security, going after Medicare, all the things that we were all promised that would remain intact are now no longer intact. And so the bill passed by one vote in the House. Now it's up to the Senate. And man, do we need to make a lot of noise. And I want to tell you about two massive protests planned. June 6th in D.C. is a big protest by veterans. And vets are people who have served our country. Many of them joined the civil service and were fired by Musk and Doge. And some of these folks are on Medicaid, and VA benefits have been slashed. Social Security offices have been closed. So there's a big protest in DC on June 6th for vets, or if you're a family or friend of a vet. and you can get to the DC protest. But a nationwide protest, if I don't know if you've heard of it, is planned for June 14th, the following Saturday, everywhere but DC, actually. And I was listening to Malcolm Nance, who's a colleague, someone I've interviewed previously, former military specialist, was talking about how he lives in Philadelphia and the center of the protest will be in Philadelphia, but we're calling on people from every rural community of the United States. We want to try our best to get 50 million people out on Saturday afternoon, holding a sign, getting a group of their neighbors together, saying that they want rule of law, they want not the rich to get richer, they want protections, habeas corpus, and constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech. So think about the 14th, and we'll be giving more information out on our social media channels about that. What else do I want to say? The attack on Harvard continues. Lawsuits are going back and forth. In Massachusetts, where I live, we are known for our educational institutions and the threats that are being leveled at foreign students coming in, needing to be interviewed, etc., is a horrendous affront to all of the values that we've always held as America. So all I can say is all hands on deck, and let's continue to speak out and share. And for all of the people who are regulars, who understand my work, or former members, how vital it is to get to know people in your community and to reach out to family and friends, even if they voted for Trump. Engage them warmly, ask them what they're thinking of things. There are news stories. You can ask them what their opinion is. For example, Elon Musk has criticized the big, beautiful bill because it's going to add money to the national debt, trillions of dollars. And of course, Musk is also under fire because Teslas are tanking in Europe in particular, but in the United States as well, because of Musk's involvement with firing people in critical jobs for no reason, except the excuse that they want to save money. But this is not what's actually happening. This is an authoritarian attempt at taking over. I'm particularly interested in people's continued rebuttal to me when I say, Russia recruited Donald Trump in the 80s. We know this from former KGB officials who were in the KGB at the time. People like Yuri Shvets, who I interviewed with Craig Unger about the book American Compromat. And people need to understand, we don't want to be living like Russians under a dictator who will kill his opposition, as he did with Alexei Navalny, or blow up his general who dared defy him, blew up a plane with other people in it, I might add. We don't want this. And so for those of us who care about the future and are not interested in, transhumanism and long-termism and going to Mars and having living in network states like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Zuckerberg, etc., are pushing, now's the time to say no. no, we don't want this, and to mobilize GOP senators to vote this bill down, to stop the enriching wealthy people and protect everyone who needs the health care, who needs the Social Security they paid into. So join us on that. I think I've covered a few things. I want to thank Bruce Springsteen again. I want to thank the Pope, even though he's being very diplomatic and not criticizing Putin about the war in Ukraine and the escalation of attacks on civilians to do terrorism. Oh, I see we have, let's see, D.L. Rowan. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm going to skip it. You should get together with Mary Trump. It would be very interesting to hear the cult experts with the psychologist's expertise. I've been open to meeting with Mary Trump. I've never talked with her. I was once on the same segment of Joy Reid's show on MSNBC with Mary Trump. I've asked Joy Reid to introduce me to Mary Trump. I've asked other people to introduce me to Mary Trump. And I know Mary Trump knows about my book, etc. But it hasn't happened yet. If anyone knows Mary, please ask her. If she's open to getting together with me, I would definitely invite her on my podcast and be happy to exchange notes. And Mitch says, oh my God, I'm going to interview Dr. Robert Lustig. Yes, I am. I met Dr. Lustig at a Brain Mind conference. We had lunch together, and I just love this guy's work. And this is a 2017 book that I hadn't read. But then after I met him, I read it. And it's really about how big corporations are tricking us and programming us to be addicted to substances that are opposite our health. Why there's an obesity epidemic in the United States. And as much as I am horrified that RFK has now announced that there shouldn't be vaccinations for pregnant women or young children with the COVID vaccine, I'm horrified by that decision. I do agree with RFK saying that ultra-processed foods and sugar are really bad for health because the evidence is overwhelming that processed refined sugars are addictive and are cancer cells love refined sugar. And when I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma some 20 years ago and underwent surgery and chemo and radiation, I was instructed to not eat any sugar so it wouldn't feed the cancer cells. So, knock on wood, I'm doing great 20 years later. The treatment was a success. And for those people who've been indoctrinated to fear modern medicine, it saved my life and has saved countless lives. So that's really exciting. I have some really interesting guests lined up for future podcasts, and I do intend to do more lives. And for those listening who like Monty Mader, who escaped fundamentalism and the Liberty University, she just interviewed me for her podcast yesterday, so I'm excited. We had so much to say. It was very cool. So I really like her. Let's see. Tim Jones. Why is Trump so adamant about dismantling American education? Is this a form of information control or another sign of cult influence? Yes, the bottom line is that there is Christian nationalism, also known as Seven Mountain Dominionism, that wants to make America a theocracy. And there's been a systematic assault on experts and science and democratic institutions. And if you're going to be a fascist, you don't want educated people because they will question you and they will see what you're doing. So I'm totally against funding charter schools, religious indoctrination schools with public money. I'm totally against defunding public school. And we need educated citizens, people who understand what civics is, people who understand what history teaches us. And this effort to do information control, you're right, Tim, it is information control, to make a more pliable populace who will just do whatever they're told. But what was particularly interesting for me was Trump, I think, in his dementia, criticizing Vladimir Putin. And my initial reaction when I read what Donald Trump posted about Vladimir Putin, my initial thought was, I bet Vladimir is thinking it's time to end Donald Trump's presidency, and not by voting, by other means that he has resorted to in the past. And maybe Trump is too big for his britches. Maybe Trump has a plan to take down Vladimir Putin. All I can say is that we really need a reorganization of values. And I submit that we want to focus on planetary survival, which includes global warming, which all of the fossil fuel countries and corporations want to keep the conversation away from. And we also need to pay attention to AI and the facts that it is developing at such a rapid pace that we will not be able to control our creations in the next few years. And we can keep our fingers crossed that it will not end us, or that bad actors won't use it against us. But very, very worried. All we can do, I tell people, listen to the Center for Humane Technology, their podcasts, understand how our minds are getting hacked by being online so many hours, so many people feeling anxious and depressed and upset. And what I say to folks as a mental health professional is you need to be responsible for taking care of yourself. And if you are aware that you are addicted to your cell phone, turn it off. You know, make a commitment to yourself. You're going to turn it off for an hour at a time. When you go out to eat, especially if you're with friends, turn it off. Don't take the phone out, even if other people do. And you'll find that you'll enjoy your life better. You'll engage with human beings better. Let's see. So why is RFK making decisions reserved for CDC and NIH? Because he was put in charge, and we've lost the power of the scientific community to push back at the administration by saying, you're going to hurt our citizens by these policies. Hi, Dr. Hassan. Is the Bethel Church mentioned in the Cult of Trump the same as the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministries in NorCal? I don't remember, honestly, if I named the Bethel Church explicitly, but I can tell you that if you talk to or look at the messaging of the leadership of any church group or organization, if they were pushing God wants Trump to be president, you can be sure they're in the cult of Trump. And if they don't say anything critical of Donald Trump, that's also a tell. Maybe not that they're in the cult of Trump, but that they are afraid to criticize a fascist dictator who wants to be king. Let's see, David says, Trump was seemingly biting his tongue in disappointment about Putin the other day, having 2-hour peace convos with him while he keeps blitzing Ukraine with murderous drone attacks. Yeah, so my take with the Trump criticizing Putin is that I think it's stagecraft, honestly. I think that Trump wants to try to convince some of his followers, perhaps some of the GOP senators who don't like Russia, that he's really not a pawn of Vladimir Putin, which I think he is. Time will tell, but I'm sure there's overwhelming evidence and to understand the Russian connection, infiltration, recruitment, and use. And I cite David J. Johnston's books, one of the earliest experts on Donald Trump, and how Russian oligarchs did money laundering through his real estate ventures, bailed him out of his gambling casino catastrophe. So, and I think that I read this last week that Trump has made billions since he took office. And if anybody knows any big influencers, please familiarize them with my work. If they have podcasts, tell them to invite me on. I'd be happy to spread the word. That's what I can do best, is educate people with my 49 years since I was deprogrammed from the Moonies cult. I just want to state categorically, I support Ukraine against Russian aggression. They are escalating the war against the Ukrainian civilians. They're not going after military targets. They're just trying to terrorize people. And I'm glad to read that Zelensky is getting support from the European NATO states who understand that Putin wants to resurrect the Soviet Union and take over countries. I read that they're amassing troops on the Finland border, which is not reassuring at all. So what do you think? I would love to have some more questions come in. If anyone has any questions, and in the meantime, I can just say that we need free press that's independent. I saw that PBS is suing the Trump administration for defunding them. We need independent investigation that's committed to journalistic standards to counter the disinformation networks. Let's see. Word Dog, I said in February 2025, Microsoft co-authored a study that showed over-reliance on AI undermines critical thinking. So no wonder AI is tops on Trump's agenda. Yeah, so this is a very important topic to mention here. And that is, I grew up in the radio era in the 50s, and then the 60s, we got a black and white television, then we got a color television. So I have a long view of media, and I can tell you I used to type on a typewriter my college papers. There was no word processors back there. So over the decades, I've been exposed to more and more tech. And I can honestly say, when I used to go on road trips in my car, I had physical paper maps. And I have to pull to the side and visualize and see where the roads are. And I am now addicted to Waze. When I get into my car to go somewhere, I'll put on Waze. And if I'm going to somewhere where I know where I'm going, it will often tell me to go a way that isn't the best or fastest or easiest way to go. And so I've learned to not depend on ways mindlessly and to keep thinking, because we need to keep using our minds. I'll also mention I saw, I'm not sure who I saw, talking about how AI agents are coming in the next few years, and we will no longer go on a browser to search Google for information. We'll tell our agent to search the information for us. But just think about how much power we're giving to an artificial intelligence agent. And yes, this artificial intelligent agent might know us and might be able to read our breathing rates and see if our pupils are dilating and all kinds of other things. But are they hackable? And is the information that they're gleaning from, doing my bidding, uh, going to be used by third parties to manipulate me or to file a lawsuit against me or something? Who knows? But the world is shifting dramatically. And this is part of what is so upsetting to people, because we like normalcy, we like consistency, we like predictability. And we're living in a time where this is not normal and not predictable. Everything seems so big and too out of control. How do you personally manage to keep from being overwhelmed? It's hard, to be honest, to do this work. And people ask me, how could I be doing it for 49 years? And the answer is because I have a passion. I feel like it's my purpose and my mission. I get a lot of gratification and satisfaction from knowing I'm helping people. But my team knows I've been in burnout mode for a few months now and talking about taking time off, but I have yet to figure it out how to do that and keep the messaging and keep freedom of mind going. But it's on my agenda. And honestly, I love to go listen to poetry. I love live music. I like to go dancing, uh, hanging out with friends, going to temple, and taking walks in nature. So that's what I do to regulate. I do self-hypnosis also. I meditate. But it's not easy. And it really helps me a lot when people message me and just say, hey, Steve, you helped me 30 years ago out of the XYZ cult. It really makes me feel good and empowers me to continue to do my work. And I'm hoping to educate the planet about my influence continuum and bite model of authoritarian control, do more research studies, write more academic journal papers, because this is, in the end, we need to know how to tell the difference between ethical influence and unethical influence. And I can say categorically that malignant narcissists are pathological liars who think they're above the law, who are sadistic and paranoid and threaten revenge, have no ability to trust, and they have an emptiness in their soul that they're trying to fill by narcissistic supply. So anyone who tells them how great they are, they're going to be responsive to them. But these are not people you want to trust. And it was my realization back in 1976 that Moon was a liar. And if he was a liar, then he couldn't be the Messiah. He couldn't be the greatest spiritual master. That he was untrustworthy. And once those gears started moving again in my mind, I knew I had to leave the Moonies cult and share how my mind got hacked as an intelligent, educated person from a loving family. yeah, I got deceived and my mind got hacked, and I've had a great life ever since. Let's see. Steve, do you think a generation may need to pass before the IS can get back to normal? Even if Trump went away tomorrow, the nearly 80 million Americans that voted for him will still be there. I don't believe that, actually. I think that there were a lot of people who were tricked and manipulated into believing Donald Trump loved America and was going to make it better. And in the weeks that have happened so far, there are a lot of Trump supporters who have exited the cult of Trump, who realize that he's a liar, that he's dangerous, and we want to embrace them. And now I want to cite Timothy Snyder's work on tyranny, and I watch his interviews because he's really brilliant, and as a historian, he says the key thing right now is we need to build coalitions. We need the opposition to be unified and stop quibbling amongst ourselves. We need to be unified to stop this dictatorship from proceeding. We want to make it really clear to anyone who supports Trump that they are acting irresponsibly, not fulfilling their commitment to the Constitution and to their constituents, and make it so loud and so clear that things start to change. More whistleblowers come out, and we go and we prosecute people who are violating our Constitution. I want to thank Diego Correa on TikTok for the gifts, and Diego says greetings from Lima, Peru. Hola is, I don't know if that's the friendly way of saying hello. But thank you for your help. Yeah, we have an international audience here. And of course, we record this and people can watch the video later. So if you have friends, family, and you find what I'm saying is useful and healthy and happy, please encourage them to check it out. Mask says, I really appreciate your content and insight. I hope you find a way to recharge. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, recharging. Well, friendships matter, and just like giving your brain a rest from the barrage of negative news. It's like, how much news do we actually need to have in a given day? And some people are just spending hours immersing their brain in negative news when they can't do anything different about it. I'm looking for specific things that I can do a video on or message about or do an interview or a blog about. So I'm chunking it down to doable pieces that work for me. And I can tell you that every night I reflect on what did I accomplish that day. And I usually have 3, 4, 5 things that I feel proud about, that I've accomplished something. Right now, we're rolling out promotion for the latest book, a workbook, Understanding Cults. I'm very proud of it. It's taken us years to get it finished and out there, and I'm thrilled about it. I'm working on a Spanish translation of Combating Cult Mind Control. And as of yesterday, I'm talking with survivors, Latino survivors and Spanish survivors of mind control cults to add to the Spanish edition. And I'm working on a 2025 introduction to my classic book that first came out in 1988. Because we really need a new introduction to combating. And I have other books that I want to do, and I have other courses I want to do. I started a guidebook for how to talk to people in MAGA that got pushed aside, but I want to go back to that and finish it. But there's only so many hours in the day, and we do need to pay bills, and my team needs to eat. So we're going to keep going. Let's see. Rebel and Light on TikTok says, I am an XJW, formerly Cult Free Life. Always enjoy your content. Thank you so much. Yeah, so when combating first came out in 1988, I didn't know the Jehovah's Witnesses were an authoritarian cult, and I got contacted by Randall Waters, a former Bethel elder, who basically said, how come you didn't mention the Watchtower? And I said, why should I have? And he said, because I've underlined your entire book. And I said, teach me. And he said, come to LA and I will. So I went to LA and I met a whole bunch of ex-JWs, and my education began. And I'll add that I later learned about the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, and then I was invited by the Ex-Mormon Foundation to learn about Mormonism as an authoritarian cult. So for me, it's always about being open to learning, listening to people's experiences, and expanding my models to make them more useful for a large group of folks. K Clock says, I hate that MAGA ideology is called Christian nationalism. I appreciate your saying that non-cult religion is based on kindness and acceptance. I hope that non-cult religion is finding a voice now. Me too. And there are many other authoritarian cults in the cult of Trump that are not Christian nationalism, like the Moonies or Falun Gong, who does Shenyang, and Epoch Times, their propaganda media. There are many other cults that are not Christian nationalism in the cult of Trump. And I did a fascinating interview with Greg Epstein, who is the MIT Harvard humanist chaplain, wrote a great book called Tech Agnostic about Musk and Zuckerberg, Bezos, and others who are believing in big tech as the new world religion. And Musk wants us to go to Mars, wants to figure out how to take our brains and link it with computers and ultimately put our consciousness supposedly into android bodies that will live forever and can go out and populate all the galaxies and universes out there. And wow, all I can say is I'm a human being. I live on Earth. I want my planet to survive. I want all the species of living things to survive on Earth. And we need to figure out how to not allow demagogues and dictators to control us. Let's see. Sadi Jamon on TikTok says, Byte model is excellent. We're very happy about your work. I'll also add your research on my book. Please don't give up. You're very useful. No, thank you so much. I am not giving up. If you haven't checked out bytemodel.com, there's a free anonymous survey you can do to analyze any relationship or group or company that you're involved with. It's a tool for reality testing. We have a new model that's 20 questions that passes all the sniff tests rather, for scientific research. And we're going to be running research on that 20 question model based on the Byte model. Stay tuned. And please become a subscriber on our YouTube channel. I'll be doing a lot more premium content. In fact, I'm meeting with my people tomorrow to develop more access content. I have another one on my team that's taking old videos that I've maintained for all these decades and digitizing them So we'll have a resource library that people will be able to get access to if they're subscribers. Because it's really, information is really important, and the history of a cult is really important. Because often if you're in one cult and you leave and don't get counseling, you may start another cult, or someone may start another cult. It's what we call splinter groups. And to know the history of where something came from is really valuable for people to reality test. Excuse me. Gabriel, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. Thanks to you, I understand that I was lucky enough to escape 2 cults in my 30s, Amway and the Shankaracharya of America. Your work is a source of strength for all. Thank you so much. Amway is a multi-level marketing group. I have them in my book. I have blogs about them. And Shankaracharya, is that the Krishnas, the Shankaracharyas? That's my recollection, is the term for devotee of ISKCON. I've interviewed Nori Muster, Steve Gelberg, Henry Doctori about the Krishnas. And I have a great interview coming up with a survivor of the Rajneesh or Osho cult, Sarito Carroll. That interview is ready to go. We always try to record a few weeks in advance. And for those of you who've watched Wild Wild Country on Netflix, in my opinion, and Sarito and other ex-Rajneeshis, sannyasins they were called, it was very biased. There were no ex-members, no cult experts, and there were 2 people who still believed in Osho who were featured, Sheila and a lawyer for the cult. And when I heard that Netflix turned down the documentary called Children of the Cult, that Sarito and other victims of Rajneesh, when they turned it down saying we've already done that cult, they didn't do that cult. They did a biased presentation of that cult. So if anyone's listening who knows anybody with power at Netflix, let's get that documentary up on Netflix or some other streaming platform. That would be really good. Anne on TikTok says, ex-Mormon here, grateful for your knowledge. Thank you, Anne, so much. Yeah, and people don't understand what we're talking about when we're talking about authoritarian mind control cults. But here's a quick graphic that's on freedomofmind.com. If you have someone at the top who claims to be a prophet or a messiah or the guru or God, or claims to speak to God and says you can't speak yourself to God, and there's a hierarchy and information varies along the hierarchy, and there are very rigid rules and regulations and ideology that you have to accept without question, and you're given phobias about leaving the group, who mean you're losing your salvation or your eternal soul or whatever, be possessed by demons. Run. Like, this is not healthy. This is a mind control cult, and we want people to wake up. Word Dog 50 Plus in the 70s, Flo Conway and Jim Siegelman wrote a book called Snapping that warned about religious cults. Yeah, I know Flo and Jim. The book came out, I believe, in 78. And they had a communications model that was their expertise. But I have a fundamental disagreement with the thesis of their book on 2 levels. One is because I was involved with a deprogramming of myself and then helping other people in the Moonies. And the whole model of trying to snap someone out of it is an overload technique that I believe is very traumatizing. And I believe in a slow series of ahas and switches of perspective with new information. So I'm very critical of snapping as a technique for helping people get out of authoritarian cults. And the other disagreement I had with Conway and Siegelman's work in that book is that they promoted Ted Patrick, who created the term deprogramming, who made his career abducting adult people in order to snap them out of it. And I refuted that approach back in, I think it was 77, end of 77, when I went back to college, and I stopped doing deprogramming and only agreed to do voluntary cases from there. So Not So Lucky Lou followed and said, my ex-husband's entire family, JW, can't fathom why I keep telling them they are in a cult. Right. So let me just take a minute and respond to you and say that telling people who are in a cult that they're in a cult is counterproductive. So pay attention to what works. And what works is warm, respectful, curious, asking questions that make the person think and to reality test. What doesn't work is saying the group's a cult, attacking the leader, the doctrine, or the policy, because that activates the cult identity to get more defensive and feel like you're persecuting them. So warm interaction, asking them their understanding of what brainwashing is, then going into Chinese communist brainwashing. That's what helped me to get out. Using Robert Lifton's model or Margaret Singer's model, they'll listen to that, ask them what they think of what Chinese communist brainwashing is, and then ask them what they think about that, or ask them about pimps and traffickers and how they groom people and systematically recruit and indoctrinate them. And then you can elucidate behavior control or thought control or information control or emotional control, because it's easier to see it in another group than the one that you're in. Another technique I like to recommend for folks, if you are in relationship with them, is to ask them to sit with you and watch a documentary about a different group to get their opinion. And as you're watching it, hit the pause button and discuss points. But here's the thing, don't try to persuade them or argue with them logically or rationally, because it will not work well. If they ask you what your opinion is, that's different. I always, when people ask me, what do I think? I always want to turn it around and say, well, tell me what you think first. And then I'll be happy to tell you my opinion and why I have it. And that I'm open to changing my opinion if there's new evidence or new information that I'm not aware of. And that attitude of being open to change is a very important one to model for people. So, because what you don't want to do is get into an intractable, I'm right, you're wrong frame. I know and you're in the dark frame. That's not conducive for growth and learning. And I really believe in wanting to be curious and change my mind. Like, it's a sign of intelligence and healthiness to seek new perspectives, new paradigms that might alter the way I think about reality. So when does your new book come out? So the newest book is my Understanding Cults workbook. It's over that shoulder up on the top. And please come to freedomofmind.com for more information about it. We have links to a lot of my blogs and interviews that flesh out the modules that we did in the 9-hour online CEU course. And we have a version of the course for ex-members and family members or anyone who's interested. That's less expensive because you don't need the CEUs. And then the Spanish edition of Combating, I'm hoping to put it out in the next few months. And the more help I can get, and the better. Because there's so many people who are Spanish-speaking Latinos and Spaniards who need to have this understanding. What timeline do you see for cult recovery? Good question. So for me, my two primary populations that I work with are people born or raised in a cult, or people like myself. I got recruited when I was 19 and spent a number of years in and got out. Obviously, my recovery was much faster because I had a sense of self. I had a family, friends, a career trajectory before I got into the Moonies. So when I got out, I could reconnect with who I was before, deconstruct how my mind got hacked, figure out social psychology, etc., and move on. With folks who are born in the group, it's a longer process, but they need to understand what's normal and healthy. If they weren't raised in an authoritarian environment, corporally punished or whatever, they need to understand what normal developmental psychology is about, what healthy parents do to help their children grow up to be mature adults. Oh, let me just see. Gifts on TikTok from Mormonismo Insano. That's an interesting name. And from Sati Jamon and Josu. Thanks for all the love from Spanish ex-member on TikTok. Thank you, all of you. So what I want to say is that in general, if you have information to understand, if you have ex-members and knowledge about the group, I would say your recovery will be much faster than if you feel alone, if you don't have a support group, if you're not getting access to a specialist to help consult with you or counsel you. And I can tell you that my experience is that doing an hour a week or 45 minutes or 15 minutes an hour a week is not the best way to help people recover from an intensive cult experience. A much more intensive, day-long intensive is going to be far more effective because you can go deep. And what I typically do, the most intensive I offer is a 4-day recovery experience. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I find I need Wednesday off to rest and to reflect, and for my client to also. But we do 6, 7, 8 hours each day, and we really get through all the key things that people need to get through in order to free themselves from the past, have the techniques and strategies for maintaining their own mind and body relationship, and develop a future plan for their future self to move towards. And as we're wrapping up, I'll just say, be in the here and now, be in your body, because mind control is a dissociative disorder. You want to be in your body, feeling your intuitions, feeling your body. Have an internal locus of control for decision making. Don't look outside for someone to tell you what to think or feel or do. Understand the toolbox of the influence continuum, the bite model, phobias, how to undo phobias, and have this positive future orientation. We need hope. We need to imagine a positive future for ourselves and map it out in bite-sized, achievable chunks. And I'm just going to go over for a minute and say that I was in my 60s when I got involved with a forensic think tank at Harvard Medical School, because I realized the law is 100 years out of date with understanding undue influence. And it was there that the director of research said, you need to do a doctorate and you need to do a quantitative study on your bite model, to which I said, I'm too old. I said, I'm 63, I'm too old. And he said, I'm 77. Do you want to change the law or don't you? If you do this doctoral program, I'll supervise your research. And I really had to stop and think, can I muster the concentration and, could I succeed in doing an intensive academic task like a doctoral dissertation? But I went for it because that was my passion. I want to change the law. And I got smarter. My memory improved, my concentration improved, and my self-identity improved. And to be honest, as much as I poo-pooed people who were doctors, I really like it when people say, Dr. Hassan, what do you think of this or that? Because I'm no longer the ex-Mooney. I'm the doctor. I'm the acknowledged scholar who's done the work and has written the academic textbook chapters and etc. So I believe I know a member of the Trump cult and will never leave the cult. Is this right? No, I don't agree. They will never leave the cult. Are not some people in the cult for life? I don't believe that either. But people need a way out. They need an exit ramp. They need to know they're not going to be attacked or judged or called names or shamed. And they need to see a better future. And I can tell you, when you're in a cult like the cult of Trump, the members know if they start criticizing Trump, everyone's going to turn on them and they're going to be the enemy. So this is not a healthy environment. You want to be with friends who can disagree with you, but they still want to be your friends, where you can have a healthy back and forth, an exchange of ideas. So thank you for staying in with me, even though we had a few technical moments. And well, I'm sure we'll stitch together the YouTube videos. I want to thank my team, Jerry, Cami, and everybody else. And we'll see you next week. And stay tuned for all the social media interesting stuff that we're working on to share. Take care now. Bye.